This, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly why I do not look forward to long Mets West Coast trips. How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and we're back at it with our latest New York Metropolitan postgame show presented by SeatGeek that has you covered for all of your ticketing needs. Use the promo code WARDY10 today to save 10% off on Mets tickets for your next purchase or anything in the ticketing space. And in tonight's show, late night edition, roughly 12:30 a.m. Eastern, we have to get into another day where the New York Mets simply do not show up with the offense. This time it's paired with two southpaws in David Peterson and Sean Manaea. And what do they have in common? They had a lot to not be too happy about from a fan perspective and ultimately from an analysis perspective. We're going to get into the highs and most certainly the lows for the Mets dropping their third consecutive ball game on this road trip, and to make matters worse, on a day where the Mets get production from Mark Vientos, get production from Bo Bichette. What they don't get is any production from pretty much anyone else for the entirety of the ball game. The Mets start off early and often with the offense, very encouraging at-bats early against Robbie Ray, and then they allow Robbie to settle in, get in a groove, and the rest is history. David Peterson looks like he saw a ghost, and a lot of things from the fundamental standpoint continue to shoot this Mets team in the foot. For the first time this season, they are below 500 with now a 3-4 record. Is the sky falling? Of course not. We've seen this team 10 games below 500 in 2024, so far from that. However, every criticism is deserved right now. Marcus Semien gets another start with Brett Beatty, who entered today's game with a .333 career average against Robbie Ray, was not in the starting lineup for a third consecutive day, and color me shocked, it was to the Mets' detriment. Now, granted, would Beatty have gone a hit today? We'll never know from the starter standpoint, and when he comes off the bench, we know that it can fluctuate in production. Semien not only was a liability offensively yet again, but defensively, how fitting is it that the same way that he gets on base for the first time as a New York Met opening day, thanks to Oneil Cruz botching what should have been an easy catch there in shallow outfield, Marcus Semien can't make the play when Luis Roberts should have not been called off whatsoever. Plenty to get into in this one, everybody, even though that is a nice quick summary for each and every one of you. Hit that like and subscribe button on your way, and not because of the fact that you're happy about the Mets losing from a Mets fan perspective, but because you were chiming in late night or watching and replay, being amazing supporters here, breaking down the latest in Mets land. Trust me, I'm not looking forward to my entire schedule being thrown in a wrench for the next week when I have a family to worry about as a father. I'm sure many of you guys and gals can relate to that, getting up for your 9-to-5s, dealing with the little ones, and everything else in between while you're still trying to be locked in with your fandom for late night West Coast games like this. To see the Mets show up early and then completely be non-existent after essentially the second inning or so is what makes this all the more frustrating. So a lot to get into in this one. Like I said, thank you so much for being here. Really does mean a lot. Let's get into this and let's break it all down. Again, guys, use the promo code WARDY10, that is WARDY10, for 10% off your next ticket purchase, linked down below. Let's get into this and let's go up to the top now. We got Rebecca, great member in the chat. Karen, great member. Karen Marino, how are you? We got Malvar, great member of 2 months. He says, what the hell is going on? I know. We're going to talk about what's going on. We're going to get into all that. Angel, how we doing? Kenny, how are you? Shiesty in the chat, how you doing? Realistic, how we doing? Wardy, say shit show. I mean, listen, again, it has been a shit show for the Mets over the past number of games. Doesn't mean that that's going to be continuation all year, no, but going back to our video that we did earlier today, talking about Mets fans PTSD kicking in, this is another valid reason as to why. Again, just more non-existent at-bats, not grinding them out, and making Robbie Ray after the first inning or so essentially look like Cy Young, or in this case, let's go with Randy Johnson, right, as a dominant southpaw, and especially fitting because he and Randy obviously known for their time in Arizona especially. Now, as we go up here, shout out to Jason in the chat, shout out to Matthew, appreciate you guys chiming in, shout out to Zach Flagerton, how you doing, my friend? Shout out to Melez, how we doing? Jeff Cohen in the chat, Alfredo, great member, how we doing, my friend? We got Matthew, how are you? Jorge, how are you? Steezy, how you doing, my friend? Jessica, how are you? Thank you for chiming in. Anthony, my guy, says, geez, yeah, again, I'm not happy about it. Trust me, you think I'm looking forward to this, and I see the Braves curb stomp the Diamondbacks today, 17-9. What the hell happened there? My goodness, my God, my gracious. Ethan, thank you so much for chiming in. Now, like I said, we got a lot to get into. This is what you got from the Mets pitching, a whole lot of jack all, okay? David Peterson looked absolutely horrendous today. There's a gnat that almost leave me alone, please. This has been a long day as is. Sean Manaea, again, while the numbers don't look absolutely terrible, when we get into the context of Sean Manaea today, it leaves quite a bit to be desired. And he just 8 innings for the Mets as he worked a pitch count north of 75. We also see on the hitting end for the Mets, this is how the lineup ended and concluded for them today. What do you see? A whole lot of nothing, a whole lot to be frustrated by, especially when you look at how the Mets started this ball game versus how they ended this ball game. This is what pisses me off more than anything, okay? And they just kept the pacing that they had within the first 2 innings. They could have got somewhere tonight. Instead, they keep every diehard, including myself and yourself watching this right now, up late night just to get a steaming pile of humble pie, which is, yes, the Mets are going to drop their 3rd straight ball game. And we got Max in the chat saying, what the F, no fight, this is a team thing. These guys are too cool. Losing is not cool. Okay, trust me, losing is not cool. I 100% agree with you on that. We're going to talk more about that here shortly, everybody. So, it's going to be a banner of a show that only happens as a hiccup when we got a lot to talk about tellingly. So let's get into this. A weird, great member, happy to have you in here. Okay, everybody, we're going to rapid fire and speed run recap this game because, like I said, there's not a lot to talk about it from the standpoint of the offense, but there is a lot to talk about from the standpoint of what went wrong for this team and why Mets fans, again, are going to continue to have their levels of skepticism, pessimism, and frustration in the early goings of the 162. And the ball game began brilliantly for Francisco Lindor. Lindor was not really much of a liability for the Mets today. While he wasn't doing too much hitting, I was really happy with his first couple at-bats. Again, heading into today's matchup, I had with my picks with Prize Picks, an amazing sponsor in the platform that we'll be promoting more in depth for you guys tomorrow. I had 3 picks today, and 2 of my 3 hit within the first inning or so. I had Francisco Lindor to have at least 1 walk or more. I had Mark Vientos to go 1.5 in total of either that we saw there in RBI, hits, etc., and or home run, and we obviously know what happened there. We'll get into it. The only pick that I had was wrong was regarding Luis Arraez, as I wasn't thinking he was going to have as productive of a day today. So you guys can fault Wardy for that one. But Lindor, again, begins the ball game brilliantly by working a nice walk against Robbie Ray, where Robbie's missing early upstairs with the fastball to the Mets' benefit. Lindor gets on first, and then Soto obviously ground into the force out. Lindor's out at second. Soto's on first. And then Bo Bichette, who has really not turned on a baseball at all so far as a New York Met, finally did that on a slider that he pulled to left. Bichette entered tonight's game 2 for 6 in his career against Robbie Ray, so it wasn't surprising to see him have that early production, but it was encouraging to see nonetheless, as Bichette is able to do that and drive in Juan Soto without a problem for his first extra base hit as a New York Met. The Mets get off to an early 1-0 lead in this game on a 98-mile-per-hour rope rip to left, and after the fact, Jorge Polanco would line out and Luis Robert would fly out, and this is how the Mets lineup began today, everybody, just in case you didn't know. Lindor, Soto, Bichette, Polanco at DH, Robert, Vientos at first base, Simeon, Alvarez, and Taylor. What did I say heading in this game? It's the same thing I've been saying for days. Brett Baty not starting just because it's a lefty-lefty matchup is a massive mistake and miscue by Carlos Mendoza. You had clear opportunity to have someone like Baty get the start at second base over Simeon today. I mean, out of all the guys that you've been willing to give an off day, you're not going to give it to Marcus when he's looked like Jack, both offensively and now defensively. Again, how long are we going to do this before coming up with the rational decision that maybe, just maybe, it isn't a bad idea to allow some of your lefty hitters to go against solid lefty pitching? Because it's almost like common sense tells you the only way for a player like Baty or Carson Bench, obviously, who's just getting his career started, to do better against southpaws in their career. Newsflash, they're going to have to face more southpaws. I understand this might be a hard thing to comprehend for some of you out there, or especially potentially the Mets coaching staff, but the reality is exactly that. So can we please stop with this stupid platoon nonsense as if it is the end-all be-all? Because what we are seeing is that it's not benefiting the New York Mets in the sense of exactly that. Tyrone Taylor has literally done nothing for you in the first couple games that he started this year. Defensively, it's not like you're getting anything, because most of the balls that were smoked against the Mets today were all ripped to the right side, in which Tyrone Taylor did not get a good read on 2 of them in particular. So I'm not saying TT is the sole reason why the Mets lost today. That's far from it. But all I'm trying to say here is that, again, Carlos Mendoza, in my opinion, is still missing the mark early as to what he should be doing configuring this Mets lineup 1 through 9. I've had some rebuttals with this. I've had some people that strongly disagree with me on Beatty, and that's fine. But while you are more focused on Brett Beatty's career sample size, I'm looking at what he did in the entire second half as one of the most productive and consistent players offensively and defensively. And I know damn well Brett Beatty's value is as good as any on this Mets roster because of that defensive versatility alone. And then you add in a bat that most certainly can grind out at-bats and keep himself in the ball game. Again, you were not doing anyone any favors by having Brett Beatty, one of your more productive players for the entire second half last year, now be in a role where he's pretty much not a lock to be in the lineup every single day when there's really nothing to justify for him not to be. You can play him at first. You can play him in right. You can play him at second. You can play him at DH. Those are 4 different positions to choose from where you can make the rightful argument that he is a more valiant and rightful option versus some of the other guys there. So now, thank you for coming to my TED Talk there, obviously, on Beatty. Let's continue on, because at the bottom of the first inning, we will get to donations as soon as I'm done breaking down the ballgame. I pinky promise. Willie Adames was strikeout swinging right away against David Peterson. So we would see exactly that, Peterson versus Adames, and you would see DP get the strikeout on the slider. It was a Hunt slider, but thankfully Adames swung right through it after he just had like a big 4-hit game yesterday or the day prior. Rafael Devers smoked a single. He had a very good game against the Mets today. Elliot Ramos with a ground out. Luis Ariz, this is where I look like a schmuck. He had himself a triple because, of course, he did. Ricocheted off the right field wall awkwardly for Tyrone Taylor, and that allows a run to come in and tie the ball game 1-1. Matt Chapman then absolutely smokes one to right for an opposite field double. Back-to-back extra base hits right over the head of Tyrone Taylor, and that quickly makes it a 2-1 San Francisco Giants lead. This is what happens, especially in the case of Peterson, because when we look at the pitch placement against Matt Chapman here, where did he? Oh, yeah, it was a changeup upstairs, up and away, that Chapman just absolutely poked at opposite field because it was hit roughly 90 miles per hour. Then Jun-Hoo Lee gets on base to make it a 3-1 San Francisco Giants lead as Peterson botches the play there that we see at first base. Mark Vientos had an underhand toss, so slightly behind Peterson. Again, it wasn't a lollipop throw over the head that you would see from Alonso an abundance of times last year, but slightly behind Peterson, wasn't able to corral it, wasn't able to make the catch, and it is a 2-run deficit for the Mets in the first inning. Bader would have the force out, but that does it. Then as we get to the second inning, Mark Vientos does what you expect him to do. Vientos entered this ballgame with very good early splits against Robbie Ray in his career. He's a very logical guy to be starting against southpaws, and made endless sense for him to start yesterday. I was all for it. The only start that did not make sense to me with Vientos so far was that first start of the season for him 3 games ago against the Cardinals, against, that being an Andre Palante. Like, it didn't make sense to have Vientos in that specific righty-righty matchup. That's a game where, in particular, I'm saying to myself, why is Beatty not getting the start here? And instead, Vientos did nothing that game. Vientos did plenty in game 3 against Liberatore, like he did a year and a half ago when he smoked a walk-off bomb against him, if I'm not mistaken. And then we see him do what he did today against Robbie Ray as he absolutely turns on one himself. Roughly 109 off the bat for Vientos, 406 feet for his first home run this season on a slider that was hung perfectly down right in the zone for Mr. Mark Vientos. Again, Vientos was pretty much a lock to have at least one quality hit today. I really felt confident about that heading into tonight's matchup, so it was encouraging to see that as he would then cut the deficit to 1 for the Mets against the Giants early. Semien would fly out that we would see. Francisco Alvarez would be called out on strikes, and then Tyrone Taylor would be called out on strikes. Alvy and Tyrone, 2 guys that you want to be feasting against this southpaw pitcher and Mr. Robbie Ray. Instead, they are getting absolutely cooked. Both of them take fastballs for a called strike 3 when they're thinking they're going to get an off-speed or breaking pitch. Not ideal, not good at bats back-to-back, and already the Mets have themselves a bit of a blunder there. Now, as we continue on, we would see in the bottom of the second, Daniel Susac making his MLB debut, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or at least he's a rookie, I know that. Gets on with a leadoff single to, yes, you guessed it, Tyrone Taylor. Then Casey Schmidt would have himself a single. Why? You see Marcus Semien pulling a O'Neal Cruz, essentially. A play that should be had in shallow center, where he, in this case, should have actually not called off Robert, who would have made that catch comfortably. Instead, he's trying to make literally the behind-the-back catch where he can't even see the effing ball. Color me shocked. It hits out of the glove, and that would allow not only him to get on base, but then Willie Adames would ground into the double play. Rafael Devers strikes out swinging, But if that doesn't happen, you likely get out of that inning sooner if you were David Peterson. So another day, another mess up by the Mets infield. Yesterday, it's Francisco Lindor for getting the out count. Today, now it's Marcus Semien who can't properly make the play there in shallow center when he should have never waved off Robert. And now we see, again, our pitcher having to do more than he otherwise should be doing. In the third inning, Francisco Lindor does exactly what he did to begin the ballgame. That's get on with a leadoff walk. Soto would strike out, and what was a good K for Robbie Ray? Soto just could not read Ray well. You could tell this entire game. Bichette flies out to dead center, and what should have been a home run, Harrison Bader does what Harrison Bader does. Since leaving the New York Mets, he's killed the New York Mets. If it's not with the bat, it's with the base running, or in this case tonight, it's the defense. Bader makes a gorgeous snag there in center. If he doesn't make that catch, I think that just clears the dead center wall. If not, hits the top of the wall and bounces out for a ground rule double. Either way, Bichette was looking really good to begin the day with his at-bats. I was very encouraged with the way that he was barreling. A lot to be happy about. And it's unfortunate that, again, after the first two innings, the Mets simply died offensively yet again. 104 off the bat, 390 feet, and instead, it's a Bader robbery. Jorge Polanco would strike out swinging to end the third. In the bottom of the third, Heliot Ramos would rip a single to left. Then we would see a Luis Arraez single, back-to-back hits. Arraez on for the second time today already. Chapman on with a single. Okay, it's a hit spree. You get a hit, you get a hit, you get a hit. David Pearson's looking like Oprah Winfrey out here, giving everyone a nice little surprise. In this case, it's a nice slice of hitting. Jung-Hoo Lee then would be out on a sac fly, but that would make it a 4-2 San Francisco Giants lead. As we continue on, Mets are down by 2 again, and Harrison Bader makes it 3. Bader with the sac fly to center to Luis Robert. Here comes Arraez, and the Mets are down 5-2. Daniel Susac would rip his second hit of the night for the rookie. He gets on, and then we see Casey Schmidt get on after a wild pitch by Peterson. Runners in scoring position at second and third. Already, bases loaded for Willy Adames. What does Willy Adames do? He strikes out swinging. So thankfully, David was able to lessen the damage there, but again, Peterson now gave up how many runs in the first 3 innings? Yeah, no bueno. He goes from a nice shutty masterclass of an outing to the best lineup he's faced so far this season, even though it's far from the best in baseball, and he looks absolutely putrid. That and the defense, just a whole lot to be discouraged by in this one. And the fourth, Luis Robert gets on with a leadoff walk that we'd see. Mark Vientos would strike out swinging. Semien would pop up because, of course, in the infield, Alvarez would have himself a single there, and then you would see, because that there's runners at second and third because Robert was on with that leadoff walk. Tyrone Taylor, this is an opportunity for the Mets where you probably don't need TT to have this at bat. I think you could have already went with the Brett Beatty route if you wanted to. Instead, they stick with Tyrone Taylor, and he flies out to Heliot Ramos to strand a pair. In the bottom of the fourth, we see Rafael Devers ground out. Heliot Ramos strikes out. Luis Arraez is called out on strikes, so back-to-back Ks for Peterson, who manages to work a 1-2-3 after settling down a bit. Speaking of 1-2-3, that's the Mets' top of the order going down in order, and the top of the fifth between Lindor, Soto, and Bichette. In the bottom of that same inning, we would see a ground out there from Chapman. Great play by Mark Vientos, so I will say, looked more than fine at first today, okay? There are times, especially in spring training, where we were discouraged from Mark Vientos' performance. What we saw today was an encouraging sign of progress, and hopefully, with the continued reps that Vientos does get at first base, you see him continue to thrive in that position. It's a less strenuous position than third. We all knew that, and we all knew that Vientos would profile best at first if he is going to play an infield position. But now to actually see these reps actually now benefiting him to his, not detriment, but to his upside, and you're actually seeing someone figure it out on the fly to try to be more of a mainstay with this Mets team. Massive kudos to him for that, because Vientos knows it is not an easy thing to find consistency in this game as a young player, and today was a nice sign in the right direction on top of what we have seen in his other small sample sizes so far this year. Jung-Hoo Lee then would get on with a walk, and that does it for David Pearson's final line. Here comes Sean Manaea, another southpaw, and Manaea would get a fly out on Bader. He would walk Susac, and then Casey Schmidt rips a single to make it a 6-2 ball game, because of course he does. Willy Adames will be called out on strikes, so another inning where Adames would strand at least a pair, if not more. But as we get into David Peterson's final line today, everybody, and again, thank you for the donations. I will get to them shortly. I will break it all down once we're done breaking this game down. David Peterson's final line, 4.1 innings, 9 hits, 6 runs, 5 earned, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, a 4.6 ERA. You know it's bad for the Mets when not only they had nothing offensively after the first 2 innings today, but your starter was absolutely garbage. The sinker, the four-seam, the slider, the changeup, and the curveball, he pretty much had everything working on the sense of velocity. The only thing that was slightly down today, if you want to say anything, was the curveball, but not even by a full mile per hour. The four-seam was actually up on the average from last year, roughly 2 miles per hour. But I'm sorry, David Peterson did not get the job done today. Very discouraged with what I saw from him. I needed him to give the Mets some length. Thankfully, Manaea was able to do that to help lessen the blow for the bullpen. But now Manaea is likely not going to be available again this series, or not until, at minimum, the end of the series for the series finale. So on a scale of 1 to 10 for Wardy's starter grades, I am going to go for David Peterson today. He is going to get a 3.5 out of 10. I didn't like anything about David today for the most part. I think there was like 2 outs that I was encouraged by. Outside of that, leaves quite a bit to be desired. When you allow that many hits, that amount of balls in play, when you still walk a pair and you're not even through 5 innings, okay, you're not doing something right. So David Peterson against a really mix and match lineup for the San Francisco Giants. You saw they absolutely feasted on the southpaw in the final year of his contract with the New York Mets. Let me know your thoughts. What would your grade be on a scale of 1 to 10? Because as we continue on in this ball game, we get ourselves to the 6th inning. In the 6th, Jorge Polanco would line out to Bader. Then we see Ryan Walker come in for Robbie Ray. Daniel Susac, we would see with the challenge, and Robert would be called out on strikes. So, unfortunately, a dotted corner goes in the favor of the Giants and not the Mets. Vientos would fly out, and that does it there for the inning. In the bottom of 6, we would see Rafael Devers smoke his first home run of the year. Right away, you see lefty, not a problem against the soft-tossing Mr. Sean Manaea, who, yes, you guessed it, provided nothing when it came to the velocity today. JTB, have a great night, my friend. I appreciate it. Karen, appreciate you being in here as well. Great member. All you guys chiming in live on the replay. Hit that like and subscribe button if you're joining the breakdown, especially on a late night on the East Coast when we should all be sleeping right now. So if you're watching this on your morning commute or listening on your morning commute, let us know your thoughts in the comments down below and your key takeaways from everything that transpired in this one. We would get 3 outs after that, but not before it's a 7-2 deficit here for the New York Mets. Blade Tidwell got called up by the San Francisco Giants today because, of course, he did, as a corresponding move for, yes, you guessed it, Jose Butto going on the injury list for the Giants. What do Butto and Tidwell have in common? The Mets traded them both as part of the Tyler Rogers deal last year, in which Tyler Rogers is now doing very good things for the Toronto Blue Jays, and the New York Mets don't have Rogers, and I sorely miss him. He's one of my favorite relievers in baseball, has been for a number of years. He's such an anomaly as a true submariner, and it sucks to not have him in this bullpen because Rogers is nails, and now we see guys like Blake Tidwell pumping gas and getting the job done against the Mets. Marcus Semien snaps an 0-for-20 skid, but if I'm being completely honest, who gives a shit? It was an infield single that he was able to leg out by a literal hair. That's all it was. Nothing more, nothing less. Alvarez grounds into a double play as he continues to have some uninspiring at-bats the past number of games, and Taylor would ground out to short to end the inning. In the bottom of the 7th, John Lee lines out, Bader strikes out, Susac with a single. Again, he torched the Mets today, the rookie. Casey Schmidt with a single. He got on base a bunch that we saw. Adames with a walk. Another bases loaded situation for the Giants to pounce. And Devers grounds out. So Sean Manaea works out of his own mess there. But again, not looking overly sharp in doing so. In the 8th inning, we would see Juan Soto with a 1-out single after Lindor would line out. And then Bichette with the very unfortunate double play. Opposite field liner. I feel like I saw from a mile, bizarrely enough. I knew Bichette was going to go oppo if he made contact in this at-bat. He's done it so often, but it went perfectly in the glove there that we saw of Casey Schmidt, who was able to double up Juan, who obviously was off the first base bag. Not as egregious as Lindor sleeping at first yesterday. I'd like to make that clear. At the bottom of the 8th, it's a 1-2-3 there for Manaea. Ramos, Arise, Chapman are all out of here. And then in the 9th, Polanco, Robert, and Mark Vientos. Robert and Vientos in particular strike out back-to-back, and the Giants go on to take Game 1 of the 4-game set. The Mets will need to make sure they bounce back tomorrow to avoid 4 straight losses, and ultimately, at minimum, they got to split the series. If the Mets lose 3 out of 4 to start this road trip, when you could argue that the Giants might be one of the easier teams out west that the Mets face all year long, that in itself is exactly why the Mets need to be cleaning up and doing a better job here. So, yeah, to say tonight was frustrating, again, is an understatement. It's one thing if you're just listening the morning after and you didn't pay attention, you didn't watch the game. It's another if you're like us who are going out of our way to actually watch tonight to see the shit show that you call a ball game. And it was a shit show. Apart my French kiddos, but there's no other way to slice it. When we take a look at this Mets offense collectively, they were out hit today 13-5, and they literally had nothing going whatsoever after the second inning for the most part, okay? The expected batting average for the San Francisco Giants today was right around 282. For the New York Mets, it was sub 200, below the Mendoza line. And for a lineup today that, again, had no Brett Beatty and had Marcus Semien in there, and I'm not saying that that alone would have made a drastic difference, but we're never going to know either. 3 straight games of the Mets not starting Brett Beatty. What do those games have in common? 3 straight losses. There's a correlation there. No other way to slice it, okay? Fits my narrative. Beatty, as a starter, has quality at-bats. When we brought him in off the bench so far this season, hasn't worked. Why break it if it was working to begin with? You know the old saying, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Well, Carlos Mendoza getting too meticulous, getting too anal about the early season decision-makings. Oh, we're facing a lefty. Brett Beatty, you got to keep your ass on the bench. Like, literally, shut up. It's already showing in real time. It's not the logical move, okay? Tyrone Taylor, okay, I can understand giving him 1 start for like in a week span. Back-to-back starts? Really? Is that really the smart move to do? Last time I checked, and nothing personal, TT. I like Tyrone as a nice late-game defensive option, as an elite base runner, and an awesome personality, and someone that you can have pinch hit off the bench every now and then. I don't like Tyrone as a starter. We've seen enough of that. He couldn't hit a beach ball the entire summer last year, and now we're just supposed to act like, oh, this year's different, okay? I understand you need to give players reps. I also understand the Mets are 7 games into the season, and them being meticulous like this with the reps that they've given to both infield, outfield, and to their bullpen has been more to their detriment than it has been to their success. So I apologize for simply wanting the best players that the Mets have on their active team in the starting lineup on a daily basis, okay? God forbid I want such a thing, right? So Lindor is now down to $130 on the average and a sub 700 OPS, even though he did have encouraging at-bats today. Juan Soto went 1 for 4 with a run scored. He has a hit in every single game so far this season that we've seen, all 7 of them, batting nice 333 with a just under 900 OPS. Bo Bichette with the RBI double. His first extra base hit as a Met. Won't be the last. Didn't he lead all the American League in doubles last year? I know he was up there. 129 average, 313 OPS. Jorge Polanco 0 for 4 at DH today. 174, 582. And according to Carlos Mendoza, he's getting very close to getting back to getting first base reps from dealing with that nagging, Achilles injury. Luis Robert 0 for 3 at center. 273 average, 838 OPS, and a pair of strikeouts. I was hoping to get more from Robert today. Felt like it was an ideal matchup against Robbie Ray, but I was proven wrong. Mark Vientos with a solo shot, his first of the year, 333 average, over 1,100 OPS. Marcus Semien 1 for 3 with the infield single that he just slugged out, $130 average, 424 OPS. Alvarez 1 for 3, 250 average, 868 OPS. Tyrone Taylor 0 for 3 has yet to record a hit this season. That is your Mets offense, 1 through 9, everybody. Collectively, as a grade for the Mets offense today, I am going to give them an easy, a comfortable 2 out of 10 because you're going to get 2 for the amount of runs that you got. The fact that the Mets only had 3 hits outside of their 2 hits that actually led to runs and this entire ball game makes you want to pull your hair out when they've been as bad as they've been to begin the year offensively. And while they didn't have many opportunities with runners in scoring position, yes, you guessed it, they did nothing with it, okay? They went 0 for 3 and left 4 on base. So now the New York Mets, if my math is correct, and it might not be, again, I'm not a mathematician, I'm just a schmuck that talks about this team for a living. If we do the math from the last series to now, if memory serves me correct, the Mets are now 1 for the last 32 with runners in scoring position. Just if we add last series and today. I'm not even including the Pirates series because it's probably even worse if you do it that way after opening day. But just over the past 32 opportunities that the Mets have had runners in scoring position, they only have 1 single hit, okay? Last time I checked, that's not ideal, right? So how can the Mets get better at this? Simplify. A lot of things I'm noticing with their at-bats, they're pressing right now. You can tell the way that they are pressing. And you can tell because the approach that Lindor had specifically, his first couple at-bats today, the way that you saw Bichette work his early count, those were encouraging signs. Even the way that Vientos started versus how he ended, you wanted more from him. And you could tell that he got a little too hungry after getting that home run for the Mets today. When I look top to bottom with the Mets lineup, what they are lacking is something that they did so great in that first game of the year that we're still wanting to get. Like, that was such a high that we're still chasing the same dopamine hit at the moment, because this team has been non-existent in their ability to grind out these at-bats the way that you naturally want as a fan. So, of course, that's going to have you frustrated, because going back to our video that we did earlier today on all the latest news and rumblings in Metsland, you know, it's true. When you have a team that was so historically bad the way that the Mets were last year, you can't act and believe that fans are just going to be able to snap out of it and think that this is completely a fresh start. There's still a lot of what that team was last year imprinted on this team, whether it's the pitching staff or aspects of the offense. Regardless of no Alonso, Nimmo, McNeil, Diaz, that at the end of the day, that's just 4 players out of a laundry list of guys who have still been here for a number of times. So the Mets are in this thick of it when it comes to an adjustment period with their new core group that they built, that they're learning on the fly how to gel together, along with April baseball that can be to their detriment a lot of the times, along with a big gauntlet of a road trip in which the Mets are just beating themselves. Like, if there's one thing that you could say today, this was the first loss the Mets have had this season where they comfortably lost, where you knew that they were not winning at all in this ball game. And every other loss the Mets have had this year, from the Pirates to the St. Louis Cardinals, their ability to stay in those ball games was in itself very frustrating that they weren't closing out the games. This one, while you don't want to see a blowout or anything like that, the writing was on the wall early and often that this team was going nowhere tonight, okay? And I wish I could have went live after the second inning just to get the show over with, because we knew that it was a foregone conclusion the direction that this game was going in after that early hot start with their offense. So to the fans out there that, again, think of last year and think of their inability to clutch up and think of their inability to grind out at-bats, what you have seen over the past 3 straight losses and 4 losses of the year, and even their win against the Pirates thanks to the Robert walk-off, a lot of this has not been encouraging from an offensive standpoint. And until the Mets find that consistency that I've been preaching the choir for each and every one of you, fans are going to continue to have the reactions and overreactions that you're naturally going to have. Do I think the sky's falling? Of course not. Again, we got a lot of baseball to be had, and I'm looking forward to watching good baseball. But if I'm being completely transparent, this kind of shit that we just watched, I'm already fed up with completely, because we watched this so consistently last year. And this is my 6th year covering the club. I've seen so much more bad than I've seen good. And when you see the same way of it being bad and the way that the offense does not grind out at-bats the way they were hoping, the way that they can't do the simple things right, the way that they even can't get the fundies right, it really does have you head-scratching, saying, why in God's name am I staying up late night on a work night just to see my favorite team lose? I digress. Here we are as Mets fans. Let's get into some donations here, everybody, before we get closer to wrapping up the show. We're not going to be too long-winded tonight, but I definitely want to get to some of your comments, and then we'll go on from there. Thank you so much to everybody for that. Let's see. Let's 609 Stretch. Thank you so much for the $10 holla. Can we stop panicking and give them a chance to gel together? This is crazy. As a fan base, we're always criticizing the team regardless of who's on it. We can't win them all. Let them get comfortable. I hear you. I do. Absolutely. And I don't think you're wrong for saying that, my friend. Thank you so much for the donation. I think something that gets lost, and I think for me personally, in either my criticisms or breakdowns by fans at times, is that you guys think that, you know, like I'm going out of my way to rag on players and stuff like that. That really is not the case. It really just comes down to holding guys accountable, because while I understand wanting to get in a groove, what I also understand is that every single game matters. And this is something that I've had to learn the hard way as a fan, and that's been covering now out of my 6th season, okay? I've been a fan many years in the past where I'd be like, okay, basically the team gets every benefit of the doubt the first 2 months of the year. And that just can't fly anymore. That ain't going to work when you do not make playoffs the way that the Mets don't make playoffs. When you have the when you have the elongated slides that the Mets have had throughout the core of summers under Steve Cohen so far. There are various elements as to why fans, I think, have rightful criticisms without going overboard. Because if there's one thing that I always preach and say to people, because this is in fact true, is that you can have a short-term reaction and criticism while knowing that the long-term is more than likely going to be okay. Okay? I can critique what the Mets are doing wrong right now because I want to see them perform better, while also knowing damn well they are going to perform better. There isn't a doubt in my mind, body, or soul that this team is going to get themselves figured out this year. That is the least of my concerns at the moment. But what's right in front of you are teams that you should be beating, and in the ways that you're losing, you're just shooting yourselves in the foot, okay? Today was the first blowout, if you will, that the Mets have had this year that wasn't in their favor. Every other game that they've been in, they have been in it, essentially until the very end. So take that for however which way you want to go about it. Malvar with the $10 haul says, Wardy, I know it's early, but the Semien trade is looking horrible. Again, it's early. If you know it's early, then the comment is not necessary. I love Nimmo. I don't regret that trade. And I hope Brandon continues to ball out this year. Brandon will likely have a better offensive year than he had last year. He's going to thrive being in Texas and in that dome for half the year and in a change of scenery. Back in the leadoff spot, something that he had not been for the Mets the past number of years. There are aspects as to why Nimmo will thrive now that he's no longer in New York, while also knowing that Nimmo's defense fell off a cliff the past couple of years. He went from being a competent center fielder to a well below league average corner outfielder. His sprint speed has completely cut in half essentially over the past couple of years. And while Semien has been very discouraging to start, if there is one benefit of the doubt that you can make regarding Marcus Semien, is that Semien historically has really bad starts to the season. Like, this is not new. But what's different is that Semien is age 35, 36 season, is not getting any younger. And it's hard to believe that Semien, who just had his second lawn hitless skid of his career entering tonight's game, is going to be able to hit highs that he did going back to the 2023 season. It feels like that in itself, that ship has sailed, barring changes that Semien goes out and proves us fans wrong. So to be determined on that front. Pat with the $2 haul says, the face has changed, the outcome is still the same. Listen, at the end of the day, the Mets still have a stench on them that they've had historically. And until they find consistency of success, unfortunately, that is going to remain the same. Not that it's going to be as drastic as LOL Mets every night, but you get what I'm trying to say. You can change the players all you want, but from a philosophy standpoint and just an organizational standpoint, there are things that the team can continue to miss the mark on, regardless as to who's actually in the lineup, regardless as to who's actually in the rotation. Malvar with a $10 haul says, I'm not trying to overreact, but this team is giving me 1993, the worst team money could buy, Mets vibes. No, my friend, that's an overreaction, and I think of the worst team money can buy. I mean, you could start with last year for the Mets for one. I mean, that's going to do laps around this team. I mean, well, like, what are we doing here? Worst team money can buy. Look no further than the 2025 Mets. This, I wouldn't put in the same category right now. And again, that's an overreaction. You know, you're contradicting yourself, Malvar. I love you, my friend. I appreciate your donations and for being a great member. But when you go out your way to say, Wardy, I know it's still early and I'm trying not to overreact, that's you trying to justify what you are then going to say, okay? Let's stick with the top part and let's erase the latter for now, right? Let's focus on the fact that it's still early and that I'm trying not to overreact, because I think both those things are valid in the case of you as a Mets fan. Let's not try to overreact 7 games into the season. Have criticisms. Feel the way that you want to feel to a degree. But know that this is not the circumstance where we were in the dog days of summer last year, where the Mets were royally, pardon my French, kiddos, F-U-C-K-E-D, fucked, and there was no point of return. They were never going to get better. It only got worse and worse and worse and worse. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic this year. There's a lot of belief that they're going to get things in unison. I look forward to when that comes to fruition. Zach with a $5 holla says, things to note about the offense. We're lacking power. Yep, low exit velocity. We're failing to lift the ball. A positive is good walk. Yes. So Troy Snicker, newly Mets appointed hitting coach, and Jeff Albert obviously have more adjustments they need to do with this Mets offense. Because right now, there is one individual that a week in the season is laughing from his couch because he's unemployed at the major league level, and that is former Mets hitting coach Eric Chavez. And there's nothing that we need to see more than an Eric Chavez to somehow be vindicated that he's proven right, that he was not the problem, okay? So, and I mean this seriously. Mets, please get it together. That's the last thing that we need to see is someone like him to be victory lapping around this organization, okay? Zach, thank you so much for that donation. I appreciate that, and I appreciate, again, every single one of you for chiming in this evening. We will be live again tomorrow. We may have a video drop earlier in the day before tomorrow night's matchup, so be on the lookout. And be on the lookout also, folks, because whether it's going to be tomorrow or whether it's going to be the day after, we will be doing a Mets jersey giveaway. So if you guys would like an opportunity to win a Carson Bench, a Freddie Peralta, or a Bo Bichette brand new Mets jersey, make sure you are chiming in to our post-game coverage throughout this series late night. I know it's not easy. I know, especially for my East Coasters like me, it's not easy, but it could be to your benefit because depending on how the game goes, it might not be as much of a live viewer count than we typically get in the show because it's so late night, and that could benefit you if you're in the live chat, if you're trying to win one of our free jersey giveaways as a thank you for our latest 38,000 subscriber milestone. Once we get a 40K or a next big goal, we will do another big giveaway that will be beyond the things I've told each and every one of you. And speaking of giveaways, everybody, before I get out of here, let me just relay one final thing in case you guys don't know. We have our amazing Wardy Day that is coming up June 12th of the season, everybody, against the Atlanta Braves. I will be there. I'll be hosting, blacked out, Friday night at Citi Field. Hope to see you there. We have exclusive tickets still available in the description down below, but we are running out sooner than later. That is not an exaggeration. We've already had multiple people from last year's event already buy tickets for this year. We've had 2 people that are new already that have already entered the fold, and we also have other people that had tickets set aside for a pre-sale that have already secured theirs too. So get them while they last, everybody, because you get amazing perks, okay? So when you go ahead and click that link in the description and go ahead to purchase tickets, if you're wondering, Wardy, why are the tickets say priced the way that they are? It's for the following reasons. 1, tickets are absurd at Citi Field. Trying to get an entire group event together is a lot of money as is just for me to do. And I'm doing this while also getting a very small ROI in return. And that's a return on investment for those that don't know that term. What you are getting is pre-game on-field access with yours truly for a group photo op. You are also going to get exclusive merch only to people who attend Wardy Day event that Friday, June 12th, against the Atlanta Braves for the rivalry matchup. The first of its kind. We've never come out with merch before, and we're coming out with it for our second annual Wardy Day this time, 2026. You also are going to get open bars. So if you guys enjoy alcoholic beverages, especially, you're going to have open bar pregame until they stop serving at Citi Field. And in case you guys don't know, the average drink at Citi Field is $15 to $20+. So do the math, and you could quickly recoup what your loss initially would be, say, in your ticket by simply just having a couple drinks throughout the game. You're going to get an $18 food and merch voucher as well that you can utilize pretty much anywhere in the stadium. You're going to have exclusive seating in the left field lounge where you can mix and match and a 2-booth setting from 2 different levels, and I'm going to be roaming around both of them and hanging out with everybody throughout the game. I'm going to be doing exclusive content with you, fun short content that we're going to record as a Q&A segment, and on top of it, we will be doing a post-game show live from the stadium. So if that is something you have interest in and would like to join us like we did to a sold-out group last year to all you amazing Mets fans, get the tickets while they still last. Link down below for Wardy Day 2026. Thank you so much, Alex, for the $2 holla. Hey, Wardy, Tommy Pham, kick these guys in the butt. And it feels like it's a foregone conclusion that we are going to see Tommy Pham at the major league level sooner rather than later. Thank you so much for the donation, my friend. I appreciate that. And thank you all to everybody for hitting that like and subscribe button on your way in and on your way out. I'm going to let you guys go now. Have a great one. I'm going to get out of here. But as always, no matter what, Mets fans, no matter what, let's effing go Mets. Get some shut-eye.